Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here for another episode of Wuxia Weekend with Kenny, Lady Chow Fung, and Adam. And tonight we're going to be talking about a movie called Supreme Swordsman. But first, I just wanted to mention we have a Patreon page, which we're going to link below. And if anybody wants to support us, feel free to follow the link and consider one of the tiers. There are different rewards. We use the money basically for things like movies when we have difficulty getting them on venues like Amazon Prime or Netflix, and occasionally we have to use them for hardware if people need replacement mics or anything. So tonight we're doing, and again, there's a little lack of clarity on the exact date this was made, but according to the film that we saw on Amazon Prime, it was made in 1984, and it was directed by Keith Lee, and the title is Supreme Swordsman, and it's a mid-'80s Shaw Brothers film that strikes a balance between classic Shaw Brothers wuxia and sort of more gonzo wuxia or kung fu. It's about swordsmaster Qin Wu Jin, whose high ambitions lead him into conflict with Yan Bei, played by Derek Yee. When Qin Wu Jin kills Yan Bei's father, it becomes an epic quest for revenge. And I should mention that Qin Wu is played by Jason Pai-Piao. So why don't we just get right into everybody's initial impressions of this movie?
I really enjoyed it. Like, I didn't expect much into a movie and yet have everything being very clear without sort of like muddling any plot lines or leaving too much out so that it's all a bit vague. But I really enjoyed watching the movie, and I thought that both Jason Pai-Piao and Derek Yee did a very good job in their roles, and I thought the choreography was pretty amazing too. I wouldn't really say it was that gonzo really. I think at least in this movie, I thought it was all sort of fairly standard effects and visual. But visually speaking, it was a very fairly standard affair. I thought so. It was a really good movie.
I'm glad you liked it because this is one of my favorite Derek Yee movies. Derek Yee's one of my top 5 favorites. I love Jason Pai-Piao also, and Ku Feng makes a little appearance in this too. So it was really a really good movie. The choreography was good. I liked the storyline. I also liked the little actress that played King. She was really good in her little role. I thought she was very convincing. And my 3 favorites actually were the 3 grandpas. I thought they were really funny.
They were fun.
A good addition.
They were fun. Apparently, they're a little bit controversial in some of the reviews I was looking at online, but I enjoyed them. So, Adam, what did you think?
I thought it was great. I mean, it's a case where there is kind of a strange tonal shift, like part way. Actually, starting when the grandpas show up, the movie kicks on a much lighter tone. It starts almost more in the more grounded for wuxia kind of style, and from that point on, it has a very different feel when Derek Yee kind of becomes the main character for the second half. And I mean, it would be easy for that to not work, but I think it works perfectly in this movie. I think both halves of the movie worked, and they fit together very well. And it was kind of interesting because you follow the villain through the early part of the movie, and then you kind of return to him at the end. And I think that really pays off because when the hero confronts the villain, you've spent a lot of time with that character, and I think it gives the final confrontation a lot of weight.
Yeah, and I do want to bookmark something Kenny said, because I think we should probably discuss whether the second portion is gonzo or what the quality of it, what the character of it is, because it is interesting that we have differences of opinion on that. This was the first time I saw this movie, and I really wish I had seen it before, because I would have loved to have seen it like a bunch of times before discussing it, because it seems like there's a lot of little things that I would have liked to have paid more attention to. But I thought it was a great movie. It had all of the elements that I like. To me, it felt like it really was sort of initially in the style of real classic Shaw Brothers, and then as it went on, it got a little bit more crazy and like more of the tonal shift stuff going on. But what I really liked about it was just the setup, the idea of this guy who's going around killing swordsmen in duels and taking their swords so he can make his 100 swords manner or whatever it was. And then how that causes him to be intertwined with the Derek Yee character, and then how there's this black magic clan that we slowly learn about, and and there's this backstory, and it just all felt very smooth and natural, and it felt like a really good film. I was surprised that the director only had one other movie, and that the other movie, what was it called? Something about centipedes.
Centipede horror.
Centipede horror.
This was a really well put together movie. Like you're saying, I mean, it's hard to do what this movie was doing and pull it off.
Yeah, so it was kind of surprising to see. I mean, again, he has all kinds of other experience making movies, so maybe that explains it. But it was, but I mean, for somebody with just 2 directing credits, unless Hong Kong Movie Database is wrong, which is possible, since it's clearly got some issues with the date of the movie, I was very impressed. So I guess we should get into the Gonzo discussion in that case. Did you guys like? Basically, what I was thinking was the first part of the movie felt like much more like the early '70s style Shaw Brothers movies, and then the second portion felt just more like like Buddha Palm type stuff. Like maybe not quite at that level, but it felt more in the sort of Gonzo territory to me.
It was definitely more playful, but I don't know if I'd go all the way to Gonzo.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it depends on what the definition of Gonzo here is. I always assumed Gonzo just meant like so far out of field, like it was just completely outrageous and like and gratuitous. But I didn't feel that for any part of the movie. So maybe that's why I'm struggling a little bit to see where the sort of the Gonzo moniker comes from here.
Okay, I mean maybe we're using different definitions of Gonzo, but also I do think that your criticism might be valid in that it's what I'm responding to is a few of the key things, like when they go into the cave in the Black Magic Clan, and and there are those flying men with the masks on. Scenes like that just felt kind of Gonzo to me, and the scenes with all the sort of weird tonal shifts and everything felt pretty Gonzo. So that's sort of what I was thinking, but definitely I think. But either way, it sounds like we agree that there were tonal shifts in the movie, that it started sort of classically rooted, and then it kind of became a little bit more zany.
Definitely.
Definitely.
It definitely got more fantastical. I wouldn't go to Gonzo, but I would feel comfortable saying it gets fantastical.
Okay. Adam, what's your definition of Gonzo? Just maybe mine's a little off.
Well, Buddha's palm is my definition of Gonzo, definitely. But I mean, once you've got like the colorful effects on the screen and people shooting bolts of energy at each other a lot, and people having giant feet that they use to smash people, that's when you're well into the realm of Gonzo. But this approached it. I will say it approached it, but it didn't quite close it.
No,
but, I mean, the flying coffin guy. The coffin guy was that actually I might consider into Gonzo territory.
And I think honestly, it not closing it is one of the things I like about it, because it kind of gets up to the line, but it's restrained enough that it keeps that the quality of the film feels intact, despite what I mean. It doesn't shatter all of this, because there's like a lot of emotional stuff that's built into the plot leading up to that tonal shift. Watching this movie, one thing I thought was interesting with the tonal shift is we were following, one character for half the movie, and he's the one who, is too aggressive. He's kind of viewing this whole thing as a contest. He's, that isn't a hero in any sense. And it's kind of like there is this fantastical world going on, but he's never given entry to it. Yeah. And then we kind of switch to this other character who's more heroic, and he actually makes the journey into this kind of side of the world that, that the villain is never going to get to see, basically. And I think we should talk about the world, because the world really does feel very fleshed out. It opens. I mean, it's really just dealing mainly with one clan in this case, I think, but there's huge backstory with it, and you get a sense that it's populated with all these interesting figures. And essentially, what it boils down to is I guess there's kind of two organizations, because there's the Supreme Swordsman, who sort of forced them to retire their clan temporarily and then put them in charge of these two objects. And something about that backstory was really, I don't know, it just worked for me really well. And and I liked that when you first meet the Jason Pai-Piao character and you see his relationship with his master, you sort of think his master's like a sinister guy, maybe. But you learn more about him, and really the I think the only real bad guy in this movie is the Chin Woo character. It's not, his master was sort of part of maybe a shady clan that reformed itself.
And I'd argue that Chin Woo wasn't necessarily like bad to start with. Like, it makes sense. Like we without knowing the second half of the movie and just looking at the first half, I'd say like he starts off like definitely not a good person, obviously, but he seemed reasonable. Like, he challenged people in open combat and he defeats them and takes their swords, which by most wuxia metrics is a decent, honorable person, right? And it's only until he starts learning about the more fantastical world, mystic weapons and hidden martial arts manuals, that he starts going a bit unhinged and and dropping his honor as a swordsman, like stabbing people with a boot dagger of all things, and that kind of stuff, and betraying his master. Yeah, all of that stuff comes after he learns that there is another world outside of what he views as his his reason for being. That he wanted to be the Supreme Swordsman, but he learns that he can't be a Supreme Swordsman unless he has all of these other additional items and techniques. So that kind of drives him off the path of his original intent.
Yeah, there does seem to be some character development there, because the whole thing with his master withholding the backhand, or was it the backhand technique? Was that the
the backhand technique?
I kept thinking of my grandfather threatening backhanders whenever. But I like the technique.
Tennis.
What was that?
I said I kept thinking of tennis, but
but I like the visual way it was used too, because I was a little unclear on what backhand was here, because in one instance he was literally holding the sword in like a backhanded position, and then later in the movie he said he was using backhand, but he wasn't doing that. So I don't know if I don't know if that was a bad translation or what, but I really liked the way it looked when he was holding it differently. I thought that kind of made it sort of a cool style. But that seemed to be the thing that really turned him. It was almost like like you said, when he first shows up, I thought, oh, he's just really ambitious, which is, it's he's not like a great guy, but he wasn't a horrible villain. But by the end of the movie, I feel like once you kill your master, then you cross the line.
Things change then.
Yeah. And once you stab your master in the back, literally.
with a poison dagger. With a
poison dagger, yes. I like the way the master's like, it's like, he's already been stabbed in the back. Then he knows there's poison on it. It's like, oh man, he has a real reaction to that. It's like, I just thought you stabbed me with a normal dagger in the back.
Well, it's all fine, but poison, that's too far. I'm sorry, I can't handle that.
Well, what was it he said to him? Don't you have any moral scruples? Was that the? That was so. No, he's one of these characters. He starts out somewhat respectable and just it reminds me of the not the Jay Valley Master, the Passionless Valley Master. Who begins as sort of this. There's like this veneer of respectability, and then just as it drops, he just becomes more and more depraved and just almost animalistic by the end. Yeah,
the difference, of course, is we don't have any sign that there's anything bad in the past of this guy, whereas the Passionless Valley Masters, you go through the story, you find out, oh wait, he was always a horrible guy. We just didn't know.
But and what do you guys think of the Derek Yee character, and of Derek Yee's performance as Yan Bei?
I enjoyed his performance as Yan Bei. I don't know why people say that he's such a bad actor. I think he's a great actor. I mean, his movements are great, and he has very expressive big brown eyes, which I find that you can say a lot with your eyes. Just looking at people can convey your emotions, and I think he does that very well. I think his performance was great. Kind of weird seeing him not as strong, his character not being a very strong swordsman as you see in other films that he's in, where he's really, really a master at the sword. And here He's not really that good of a master, but he does learn the secret of the sword, which helps him to defeat his enemy. So he's smart and good, but not as good as you usually is.
Yeah, and I don't get the criticism of him either. I find him to be a very charismatic actor. I think he can work well as a villain or as a hero. I think he really shines in a lot of the Choi Yuen movies that he's in. Like, Choi Yuen really seems to know how to use Derek Yee well.
Yes,
and he
definitely
understands like what Derek Yee brings to the table in terms of the visuals. But I think Derek Yee's fine. And I was looking for this movie because like I've heard that so much, but I don't understand why that keeps coming up whenever, in discussions and things. And the only thing I could think of is he looks a little bit skinny at times, but that was maybe the clothing. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't like once you put his heroic outfit on, he didn't wear it fine. So I don't know. And also Derek Yee has like a particular way of parrying like that I really like. Like he kind of thrusts the sword out and leans back, and it looks really good on screen. And I notice he always does that. I don't remember other actors really doing it that way. So he's got his own like fight choreography style too that they kind of cater to, which I think works visually. But yeah, I don't know what Adam and Kenny, what do you guys think?
I thought I don't. I mean, as the person that's not the expert on this genre, I was totally unfamiliar with the fact he's regarded as a bad actor by a lot of people. I never would have thought that at all. I thought he worked. I thought all the casting in this movie was great. I thought everyone was cast exactly perfectly for the role they had in this movie.
Yeah, and I thought he did a really good job in this movie. And I can't think off the top of my head what other Derek Yee movies I've seen, so I don't really have like a benchmark to compare with.
Heroes Shed No Tears would be another one that we saw.
Oh yeah,
where he played the bad guy.
Yeah.
I know we've seen plenty of others. He's Buddha's Palm is another one that he's in.
Heaven. I always get it mixed up.
Heaven, Sword, Dragon,
Dragon Saber.
But do we do that one?
I think you and I did that one.
Okay.
Didn't we?
I don't think we did. I think we have to put that on the list because I don't think we've done that one. I think we've had discussions about it, but I don't think we've actually recorded a podcast about it.
Huh.
I could be wrong. But yeah, no, I thought he did a very good job here, and I liked his character. He was kind of a Luke Skywalker type, I thought, in this one. In fact, this movie kind of had a lot of those sort of. It had that vibe to it. There were a lot of really great scenes involving like the disciples and the masters, and they were kind of contrasted with each other, like between the Jason Pai-Piao student master relationship and the Derek Yee student master relationship, and the thing with the death of the father. And so and that scene, we'll talk about the fight choreography in general, but that scene in the woods, the fight scene between who is the Supreme Swordsman and Chin Woo. I thought that was a really great scene, and it kind of reminded me of the Touch of Zen Bamboo Forest fight scene a little bit. It just kind of had that vibe to it for some reason.
And I think, was that one of the scenes where the fighting started to get a bit weird as well, with the chained forward rolls and like, it was because at some point Jason Pai-Piao's character started doing really outlandish martial arts moves, right? And everything was sped up. The fight scenes were sped up, and it all looked a bit weird.
They were doing that a lot. They kept doing the reverse crank thing, and they were doing it, but they were choosing to do it at certain times and not at others. So.
And I didn't like that. That was my only criticism with that movie was I didn't like that.
No. What's your? Do you generally not like reverse crank, or you just didn't like the way they used it here?
I didn't like the way they used it here. It was fake to me. I knew that's not the way that they would fight. So it just looked weird to have it with some and not with all.
Yeah, because I started noticing it. I mean, it came in earlier, but where I really noticed it was the Gu Feng and Jason Pai-Piao duel. Yeah. Which I really liked. I liked that one a lot because you really saw the tactics at work, especially when when Jason Pai-Piao held his sword out and kind of was trying to encircle Gu Feng a little bit. and just like the footwork and everything was kind of really visible on camera. But I thought that, yeah, I don't know how I feel about the reverse crank in this. I usually am a fan of it, but it felt a little bit overly liberally used, and it didn't seem like it served a purpose, unless that purpose was just to shave time off the final running time or something. But I did like the fight choreography. The fight choreography and the performances, they were really good. I didn't have any complaints with that. I don't know if you guys did.
I thought it was good. And part of the choreography stuff was still like the tonal shifts in the beginning of the movie. It was all very grounded, but then as we go along, it does get more and more outlandish. And I would say that the final battle was actually more grounded in reality again. It's just that everything in between the midpoint of the movie and the end was where it all got a bit close to Gonzo, as you say.
Yeah, we can interpret it that maybe like when Derek Yee's character falls down at the maybe he just like basically got knocked unconscious and hallucinated the whole rest of the movie. We could kind of go with that.
Well, I think it's more key to what Adam was saying earlier, which is that like the deeper you get into the movie, the deeper you get into this really weird martial world, and so the tonal shift sort of reflects the like texture of that world. Like you're meeting all these eccentric characters, and so it kind of makes sense in a way. Like it
does.
Well, yeah,
and it being grounded again at Kenny's point about it being grounded at the end. It's like he's got to come back from that. He's got on this kind of hero's journey through all this weird stuff, picked all this stuff, and now he's kind of gone back to the for Wuxia at least real normal world again now.
What was that, Dion?
I was just gonna say I think I noticed that it was getting kind of fantastical. Was once that Jason Pai-Piao's character combined the Eagle Sword with the Creed Mountain Manual. Once he combined that, then that's when everything started to go haywire.
Yeah.
Or crazy. But I guess Derek Yee had to learn all that craziness in order to get to that final grounded battle to be able to defeat him, Jason Pai-Piao's character. And he had to get the special sword that his father had because he knew that the sword would be able to combat the Eagle Sword and the Creed Mountain Manual.
This is the part of the movie I love. I want to talk about the last battle because his father's a swordsmith. He makes this great sword. There's build up to it's like Conan. In Conan they show them like they're running the metal into the mold and all that stuff. They do all that. It's not quite as melodramatic or as dramatic, but it's still it's a big thing that you're aware of throughout the movie. And when he finally gets this sword, he starts using it, and it just gets chopped down to pieces, like it's just falling apart in the battle. And I'm honestly starting to think, I'm like, wait a second, are they going to do something where like the hero just dies like ingloriously because the sword's no good, and heroes sometimes just trip over and die randomly? Like, what's going on here? And then the reveal at the end when it gets whittled down is there's like a hidden sword inside of the blade that he can now use to stab the bad guy.
I was thinking, like, when the sword was broken, I thought, like, okay, this is going to be a very deep martial arts theory thing of, even if you don't have a sword in your hand, if you have a sword in your heart, that's going to be enough. And that's why, that's why the father made this really crappy sword for him, so that he could learn that, that even the Supreme Swordsman was wrong, and that, you don't actually need a sword to be the Supreme Swordsman. But no, it was a hidden spring sword.
But there were key phrases. I can't remember who said it, but they said something like, when you have the courage and the strength and the clearness of mind, you'll be able to see the secret of the sword. So then, it gets all chopped up and you look down and it's like, hey, I got a secret. I like that. I like hidden mechanisms in the weapons. I think that's like a really cool tactic to employ in movies.
Well, it was also meaningful because this is at the 100-sword Villa, so those 100 swords are right behind him, and Jason Pai-Piao's character keeps offering him one of those swords, and he says, "No, I know my father's sword is broken, but I'm going to keep using my father's sword." So it's like the filial piety that his character has that the Jason Pai-Piao character doesn't because he killed his master is on full display in that scene, and so I think it really works thematically, like tying the whole film together.
Did you realize that both Derek Yee's character and Jason Pai-Piao's character were told at key moments that if you had your swordsmanship is good, but if you had a better sword, you would have been able to kill me.
Now that you're mentioning it, I remember that, but I didn't notice that parallel while I was watching it. I think there's definitely like. They're definitely two characters that you're sort of supposed to be following, and they're going down like very different paths. And because that scene where he like killing your master in the genre is even kind of rare. Like even like the worst villains often don't do that sort of a thing. That's like the worst thing you can do, I think, if you're a wuxia hero, you know. So he's. I mean, once he does that, that's just like. You know, there's no boundary he won't cross, I think. But yeah, I did love that scene. I thought that the thing I really liked about it too is that fight scene genuinely surprised me. I didn't once the sword started getting whittled down. Maybe I was just stupid today, but I was like, oh my god, Derek, he's gonna die. He's gonna get killed by this guy, and this crappy broken sword is gonna be put in the 100-sword Villa mantle. And
it was a real surprise because that sword's been built up for most of the movies, so you're like, ooh, he's got the sword. Yeah, I mean, when it gets bent that time, as soon as it got bent, I was like, well, what's going on?
Well, the thing is, I was holding out hope because it gets bent, and I'm like, okay, maybe, and then he bends it back, and then the guy's like, you stupid idiot! As soon as the sword's bent, it's breakable. And I was like, oh, but they said it was a special kind of iron, so maybe that's its secret, and maybe he's going to use the bending thing in some way, and then it breaks. And I'm like, okay, it's broken. Maybe there's like some additional property to the sword that is really effective when it gets down to a certain length. And
they also have the thing where pieces of it get stuck in the wall, and he starts throwing them. I'm like, oh, maybe it's meant to break, and he's got all these little daggers, and he's going to kill him. No, he keeps missing him. What's going to happen now?
Maybe the pieces will start flying around him with the power of magnetism.
But yeah, it is nice how there's so many stages in that fight. I mean, it keeps you interested. I mean, in the ending of the fight, having him fall into his stand of swords and them impaling him was pretty great too. That was a nice touch.
No, I like that.
The sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah.
And I just loved how like by the time he gets to the bottom of the thing, you have like no hope left as a viewer, and then that's when he looks and he sees something, and you know it was really well done. The whole movie, to me, I was delighted this whole film, and I was just frankly like I felt bad that I hadn't seen it before because it's one of these movies where it's like I really should have seen this ages ago.
I told you.
Yeah, no, Dion was mad at me that I hadn't seen this movie. And I think she had every right to be. I was. It's like it's a movie that shouldn't have been neglected. You know, sometimes I felt that way when I saw Hero Shed No Tears. I was like, how have I never seen this movie? You know, it's that kind of a film. And again, I said the same thing about Duel to the Death because we covered it on Thursday at Wuxia Workshop. But it's this interesting blend of quality and zaniness that, you know, just sort of like there's. They get into zany territory, but there's a real it's the whole film is grounded in very good filmmaking, and I think that really holds it together.
I love Duel to the Death.
That's
one of my favorites.
It's a really good. Have we ever done Duel to the Death on here?
I thought we did. We'll have to look back at it.
Yeah,
and there's a really good interview with Norman Chu about Duel to the Death on YouTube.
So if we haven't done it, we should watch that interview and discuss it because. I feel like I don't know if we have either. It's funny, we do so many movies now, it's like we can't even remember if we've done one sometimes. But Duel to the Death is that's a really good movie to watch after a film like this one. And it's so different too, even though I think it was made before this one. It's filmed in a totally different way. What did you guys think of the comedy in this? Did the comedy work for you? Oh, go ahead.
quick one about sort of about the sword. And I know I was saying it was a massive twist, but in hindsight, it was actually kind of foreshadowed in the fight with the rumor monger person, the scholarly person,
Mr. Know-It-All.
Mr. Know-It-All. Was that his name?
It's something like that.
How was it foreshadowed?
They gave a translation of his name in the subtitles, and I think it was Mr. Know-All or something.
How did he foreshadow it?
Because his sword was the sword within the sword within the sword within the sword.
Oh, okay, okay. That's very clever. Yeah, see, this movie has a lot of little things like that. That's why I wish I had seen it more. Like, and also the scene when Jason Pai-Piao first confronts the Supreme Swordsman and he throws that scroll at him and he slices it down the middle. And then there's and then it turns into like a meaningful phrase because it's, you have to read it, top down as two different lines. I thought that was really clever.
But yeah, I just wanted to mention that because it just occurred to me. Oh yeah, no, weird things within swords was actually foreshadowed already briefly. So it's a bit of a Chekhov's gun type thing. Like it wasn't just there to be cool. It was actually a hint as to the actual secret of the sword that the father made.
But I guess getting to the comedy, did the comedy work for you with the goofy masters and the sort of the forest monk scene or any of the other comedic moments?
I thought it worked. Like traditionally in wuxia, you always have weird old people, and I wouldn't say that it's not complete without them, but as part of a hero's journey in wuxia, you tend to encounter eccentric people who take you under their wing, maybe teach you some martial arts because they like the cut of your jive or whatever. Yeah. And I feel like it added to the story because you have these eccentric people who you know nothing about, and only towards the end you sort of learn that they're all part of the same sect anyway. So I like that they were strange, and everybody in that sense was kind of strange actually. Come to think of it.
Yeah.
Or the six elders are all kind of weird.
Yeah, it's like I like the scene where the three grandfathers show because that's where you really get the tone shift. It's like I remember right before the scene where they duel for right before the grandfather scene when he loses the fight. At the beginning of that fight, I was kind of looking at the time and I'm like, we're only halfway through this movie. I already feel like I've watched an entirely satisfying wuxia film. Yeah. What are they going to do for the second hour here? It wasn't like a bored kind of asking. It was just like, I feel like I've eaten the full meal already. And then you hit that scene. It's such a different flavor. It's like, okay, I'm ready for the movie to just go in this completely new direction now.
Time for dessert.
No, that's why tonal shifts work like that, because you if it had been an additional 45 minutes of everything that led up to that, it might have gotten boring. Who knows? Like you might have started to lose interest, but because it shifts tone, it's like, ooh, something new and interesting. And a lot of movies in this period are like that. They shift tone dramatically sometimes. So
yeah.
I'm sorry, Dion, were you going to say something?
I enjoyed the comedy. I always seem to like when three old fools kind of show up in a movie. They always make things really interesting and fun, and I think that the tonal shift was needed. Otherwise, you would have gotten completely bored and turned off by the movie with the length of the movie if it was just the same monotonous thing over again. But I like the way it was shifted. It worked.
Yeah. And I have to say, I had the same exact reaction that Adam had at the 45-minute mark, where I was like, wait a second, it's only 45 minutes in, and it looks like we're about to get I know that he might lose and he has to fight him again, but what's that going to take, 20 minutes? So like I was starting to wonder what was going to happen.
It's funny because I hit that point much earlier in the movie, like at the sort of quarter movie mark. I started thinking, okay, so we've covered quite a lot of ground already. So the father's obviously going to die here, and then the son will train and then fight. But that shouldn't take another hour and a and 15 minutes, should it? And I just found myself like quite surprised at how much further it goes. And this is what I was saying before about how much they actually fit into this movie and how all the plot points are woven together without feeling like there's too much of anything or too little of anything else, because it was just like it's all very cohesive, despite how much content there is here.
No, I would agree with that. Now, one thing I wanted to ask, but I don't know if anybody noticed this. Remember the antidote that the weird forest monks used, the grandpas used to heal him? Remember they started stuffing his face with all kinds of antidotes and stuff?
Yeah, like black lizard and some kind of eggshell and just a whole bunch of weird stuff.
Well, but some of them sounded like movie titles. They said like Blood Parrot. And,
yeah. I did notice that. I wanted to say that because Black Lizard, I just watched that 2 days ago.
Black Lizard and
was
Jade Tiger. And the bat.
Yeah.
The bat could have been like Legend of the Bat or Bat Without Wings.
Bat Without Wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the metamorphosis of the silkworm, that could have been Bastard Swordsman. You know,
yeah.
So
you're right.
I was thinking like, oh, they're like referencing all these movies. They're putting like the wuxia movies into this guy, and like maybe that's like, you know, like I was like, this is getting really meta.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see when in '83 it came out, because I think that's the same year that Bastard Swordsman came out. So like it could have been a movie that just came out even, or I don't know, I guess could have been being worked on at the same time too.
Yeah, no, and again, I mean, you know, maybe, but once I was like, Blood Parrot, that's a really weird thing. Like, I could get I could dismiss Black Lizard and Bat being paired, but Blood Parrot is like a very specific kind of movie reference. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, and I was expecting to see more of it, but then there was never any additional stuff that I could find in the scene. But yeah, so that really intrigued me, and I'd like to really go back now and see like, well, what's the pattern? Like, why those movies? You know, like what about those movies are we drawing on? And so yeah, so you know, I thought the comedy worked, and I thought that I thought even the regular fight choreography in this movie was sort of done in a way that reminded me of really well done slapstick. Like, not that it was funny, but that it was like very inventive, and it was sort of like the guy would block and then he'd drop his sword down and stick it in the ground and then he'd take his hands off. You know, it was like all very sort of like, whoa, what is he going to do next with his physical movement? It was almost tiring watching some of the fight choreography. So I felt like there was a slapstick quality even to the serious stuff in that way. But yeah, so I don't know, I guess you know, moving on to sort of like, unless, is there anything that we haven't covered yet? Does anybody feel like there's something that we missed in the discussion before we move on to sort of the recommendations and ratings of the movie?
I think we've talked about most of the major things. I'm sure after we end the recording, it's going to be the usual case of, damn it, we should have talked about that. But for now, I think we've covered most. I guess maybe with I guess we spoke about the sword already, but we didn't really talk about the eagle sword. I don't think there's anything special about that though. Like, and the swords in general that Jim Wushin collected was, all of them are supposed to be precious swords. But I'm just trying to think of what does actually mean in this setting. What precisely constitutes a precious sword?
Here's what I was thinking, because when he pulled there's a scene when he goes to the smiths and he pulls a sword off the shelf and he tests it. And he says, "Ooh, very," he says, like, this isn't bad. It reminded me of going to a music store and picking up a guitar off the shelf and being like, well, okay, like getting a feel for it. So I felt like these are like just really well-made swords. Like that's sort of, but that's a meaningful thing. Like there's a difference between playing like a guitar that costs like $2,000 and a guitar that costs $200. You can feel the difference when you're playing them. And so I think that was the, I think it was more that they were well crafted and well balanced and reliable and didn't break in battle than that they were like super significant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I was just surprised that he got 99. Like, usually when I think of precious swords or precious weapons in wuxia, it's stuff like Heavenly Sword, Dragon Saber, or in this movie it'd be the Shunyuan Jian and the Chenyuan Sword and the Eagle Sword. These named weapons that have maybe properties. That was super well made. Like everything else, like I don't know what maybe he had very low standards of what a good sword actually was.
But it wasn't about the swords when he collected the 99. What it was about was he was defeated 99 very good swordsmen. So you assumed that the swords had to be good in order for them to be good swordsmen, because the sword is essentially the extension of the swordsman. So if you're beating a good swordsman, you're collecting a good sword. And he wanted to, beat the top 100 swordsmen so that he could be the Supreme Swordsman, because he had the Supreme Swordsman had the best sword they thought ever made at that time.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I don't think, really, to me, the swords weren't all that precious, because especially when, if he used his sword to beat those 99 other guys, and then he went to go and fight the Supreme Swordsman, and he couldn't beat the Supreme Swordsman, and actually his sword was split down the middle, like the scroll was, then what does it say about the other swords that he used, that he defeated with his own sword? So I don't think those swords were really precious. I think it was just more about the names of the people that he defeated, until he realized that his own sword wasn't good. So he went on for the search for a really good sword that would defeat the Supreme Swordsman's specially made sword.
I really like the collector aspect to it, because number one, once you start a collection, you just can't, you gotta keep going. It's like you got 10 swords, and then you want to get 10 more, and then it just becomes this huge thing. But also my grandfather on my other side of the family, not the backhander grandfather, used to collect belt buckles, because he was a truck driver and you get them from all different states. And like you can just see how these things just grow and sprawl like that. And I don't know, the fact that there's like this backstory, like Dion was saying, like every sword represents a defeated foe, is really, that's a really cool eccentric thing to do. It's like I had so much respect for that character when I realized that's what he was up to. It's like I'm like that's a really good goal for like martial arts are all about goals, and that's a really good goal to set for yourself if you're in this sort of martial world and trying to make a name for yourself.
Yeah, I think my confusion for that mostly stemmed from the fact that he was saying treasure's sword in Chinese every time he referred to his collection. So I guess it makes sense if we consider it from treasures from the original wielder point of view, rather than the actual swords themselves being precious. And that would make sense.
But also there might have been a thing going on where they were kind of like, I don't know how to put this, like they were sort of putting a twist on that, because like the Zhuan Yuan sword that's like a legendary sword, right? Like that's a big name to drop, and the Supreme Swordsman ends up breaking it in two, right? And then giving it to him. It's like the ultimate, like the sword. It's like this great sword doesn't even really matter. I just broke it with my hands. Here you go. So like I think that maybe that was kind of part of the point of it, like that they were sort of. And even with like the sword at the end, like the great sword that his father made was just getting broke. We found out there was a blade in the middle, but like it's just kind of getting reduced and falling apart, and it felt like none of the swords felt like they were super spectacular, or that they did anything. Like they kept talking about how you need a great sword to defeat a great swordsman, but they weren't really doing anything special except for like breaking,
It's funny because, I was trying to figure out if the Supreme Swordsman was, at a higher level compared to everyone else, where he was actually trying to guide Qin Wuxin in, not necessarily like as a master thing, but as like a sort of a brief teaching moment. It's like, well, okay, first you've marshaled your you've got your foot in the door for becoming a master swordsman. Your next step is to get a good sword to hone your skills, and then the ultimate state is just to break the sword and you no longer need it. Because technically speaking, the Supreme Swordsman kind of beats Qin Wuxin with a paintbrush, right?
Yeah.
So that sort of like implies to me that there was a realm where weapons no longer matter. Kind of also why I thought that at the end, when the sword, the father's sword was broken, I was like, well, is that going to be him awakening to this philosophy? Because the three old men were saying like, oh, if only Derek Yee's character could amalgamate of all of our martial arts into one and use it freely as his own, then he'll be able to be unparalleled type of thing. And I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a moment where he combines what he's learned along with his insight to the fact that the sword is not important, but swing sword is cool as well.
I think there's a lot to that. And I feel like the Supreme Swordsman, that was kind of his thing. Like he was sort of he seemed to be a reformer of people in a way. Like that's kind of what happened with the original Magic Clan, right? Like they were sort of sent on a better path. So maybe he was hoping to do that with Chin Wu, and Chin Wu was just, in Walking Dead terms, too far gone to.
Yeah. And I think Kenny, what you're saying. I mean, I think to a degree you can even read it in the ending we did get, because it's not like the greatness of the sword wanted. It was a trick. It was a very clever trick, but it wasn't like it made it. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the movie does ever show that. I think you're right that there was somewhat of a message that the sword ultimately doesn't matter.
Well, and I guess also, because it is a sort of situation where the father is sort of using the villain's obsession with the sword against him in that scene, right? Because he's so focused on
whittling the sword down.
Yeah, well, not just that, but he's commenting throughout the battle, like, I thought your father was this great, swordsmith, and this is like a piece of crap. Do you know what I mean? He's just sort of he's sort of underestimating it as a result of, but I don't know, that scene was just, I really like that the father had that kind of forethought. But I was also wondering if maybe Derek Yee knew, because he had put the mold together, right? Like that was his job, was to set it in the mold. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if maybe he had some hint that other people didn't about the true, secret of the sword.
It didn't seem that way to me, from the expression on his face when he noticed that the sword that was there was another sword in there. It was kind of like an aha moment for him. I think that he had a hand. Well, we know he had a hand in making the mold and setting it and everything. But I think the father did a lot of work when he wasn't around. Yeah. That was able to keep that a secret.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Because when he went away to visit Crow at Jason Pai-Piao's place, he probably worked on it then and maybe at night, and just kept a lot of it hidden from him, because he knew he would need it someday. So it was just...
Yeah, that was... and I did like that scene when Jason Pai-Piao walked into the Smiths and I want this sword. And, I want the one you're making. And he's like, no. And he's like, well, I'm going to be back in 3 days, and you're going to or 10 days, and you're going to give me the sword. He was a very sort of... very haughty villain at that point. So why don't we get into the recommendations and the rating of the movie on a scale of, like, say 1 to 5. I guess going from, I'm going to go in order on my screen from Kenny to Adam to Dion. How would you rate the movie? Would you recommend it to people? Any parting thoughts on it?
I would actually say this is a 5 for me. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and I think anybody who likes wuxia movies, especially ones which have a slightly deeper hint of the Jianghu and plot behind it, would definitely like this movie as well. Like, a lot of the things, like the characters in the movie, sort of evoke a bit of imagination as well. You think, oh, there's this Mr. Know-It-All, and then these swordsmiths, and an entire sect that went into seclusion, and then I really enjoyed it, and I do think this is, it's both a hero's journey and a bit of an epic as well, in the sense of scale that the story can have. Definitely recommend this.
Yeah, I'd be willing to give this a 5 too. I just watched this right before the podcast, so I haven't had a huge amount of time to digest it, but I enjoyed every minute of this movie. Like I said, the time check I did in the middle wasn't oh my god, how much time is left? It was, wow, how are they going to fit more in here? And and it's definitely something I'd recommend to people. I think this is something it feels having watched a lot of wuxia movies now. It's like it's really an exciting one, even if you're used to the genre. But I feel like it would also be something I'd recommend to people if they haven't seen any. I feel like it would also be a good introduction as well. So it's just an all-around very good movie in this genre.
I'm going to give it a 4.8. I really thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It's one of my top 5. I think it's probably one of my top 3 favorite Derek Yee movies. I think it was very well put together. It was fun at the end. I liked the tonal shift that it had. I loved the characters. I think it was a really good, entertaining movie, and I definitely recommend it to people.
Yeah, and I'd give it a 4. That was my initial rating when I asked the question, so I'm going to stick with my 4. But I do think that it's the kind of movie that I could definitely bump up after watching over, the course of several months or years, and deciding, okay, this is definitely a 5, because I'm usually pretty slow to give the 5. But but I thought this was a great movie, and I was, like Adam was saying, what I liked about it is it was very refreshing. And I've seen a lot of wuxia movies, even refreshing ones, but this one still surprised me. It still, it made, sometimes you watch so much wuxia, you'll watch a movie and you'll be like, oh, I'm a little tired of some of the genre tropes or whatever, it's getting a little stale. This movie is not stale. It's not stale in an interesting way. It doesn't just sort of like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It takes some chances, but it still stays grounded, and it still feels like you said, like a proper wuxia movie that would be a good introduction to the genre. So, and again, there was like some really good filmmaking underneath it, and I think just in the course of the discussion, we were all noticing things about the movie that were that made it feel like this was a movie that was well thought out. It wasn't just sort of they kind of put it together and tried to make things work. They really planted a lot of seeds that played dividends over the course of the movie, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. Like this is a movie where I'm like, I need to see this movie a second time and a third to really absorb everything about it. So I would highly recommend it, and it is on Prime, so people can go and check it out. We'll put a link in the description, and next week we'll be back with another sword theme movie, and I think that on Wuxia Workshop, me and Joel are going to be doing 36 Chamber of Shaolin, and we'll also be doing Magic Blade. So you guys have that to look forward to. And again, just before we head out, if you want to check out our Patreon, we have different rewards and tiers that you can sign up for, and those will help us continue with the podcast. And so until next week, we'll talk to you later.